Welcome back to The Chosen Life. I'm your host, The Chosen Lawyer, and co-piloting with me today is Wayne Frazer of Doug Laurie Sports. Wayne, good morning. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How are you? The kidney stone adventure is almost completely over now for me, and I'm back to drinking my coffee in the morning here. Hold up my nifty little mug, and glad I'm not on the coaching staff of the Indianapolis Colts this week.
For those of us that fortunately have not ever experienced that, Wayne, I don't know if we shared that in a previous episode or not, but are kidney stones as fun as they say it is?
So I woke up. This is about a month and a half ago. I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it felt like somebody was standing on my side, like a really bad stitch, like you've been running or something. Not that I do a lot of running, but and I just thought, I'm going to be graphic here. I just thought it was gas or something stupid like that. So I tried to gut it out, and I just could not feel better. Cold showers, they seemed to help a little bit. I drove into work the next morning. I made it from about 10:30 till 12, and then stupid me, the hospital's 3 minutes away. I drove home, still thinking whatever the problem was. And by this time it's excruciating. Like, it was just awful. I felt like I had to throw up, and I couldn't throw up, and it was just terrible, right? So finally at 5 o'clock we called an ambulance. I went into the hospital, and they said, "Oh, after 8 hours in the emergency room, um, you have a really terrible kidney stone, but you also have a really terrible kidney infection to go with it." So I was in the hospital for a day or two while they pumped me full of antibiotics. And while I'm laying there in the bed, and to shout out to the nice folks at Royal Victoria Hospital here in Barrie, they did a wonderful job. Thank you very much, folks. Um, I still felt like a big baby. I mean, I'm an American, so we don't go to the doctor because it costs us money. Um, and so I'm laying there, and I thought, I'm going to Google, what is kidney stone pain comparable to? Kidney stone pain is comparable to acute appendicitis, which I've had already, and kidney stones is worse, and childbirth. And I thought, okay, I'm not as big of a wuss as I thought I was. And then in the interim, I went in 2 weeks ago and they couldn't use the ultrasounds. They had to do it with a laser, uh, in a rather invasive procedure that I will leave to your imagination. Um, and I have spoken with several women since then who have had multiple children and had kidney stones later, and told me that kidney stones were far worse. Um, I have a doctor who is a customer, a retired doctor, and he said that his mom had 4 children in 5 years on a rural farm in Ontario, natural childbirth and the whole deal. And she got kidney stones 10 years later, and she said she would take the natural childbirth all day long. So all I can say to people is that if you feel that, whatever, it's a pain in the side, and it just gets worse and worse. And what actually was happening was, it's something called coddling pain. If you have kidney stones or appendicitis, you'll see people in the emergency room, and they'll kind of be rocking back and forth, or like this. The movement actually allows you some comfort for whatever reason. For me, it was getting up and going and taking cold showers. I was fooling myself into thinking the cold showers were helping, when really it was just the walking around. It was nuts. Like, I was an hour and a half away or 2 hours away from my appendix bursting when I was in my early 20s, and this was far, far worse. Unbelievable. So, yeah, I don't recommend it. 0 stars.
So for those that suspect they may have it or feel it, is it like on the side? Is the lower back, Wayne? Where does the pain originate from?
For me, it was on the side and around the lower back, and it just intensifies the longer you have it. I've spoken with some other people now who had it, and it went all the way around their back. The fun thing is, and again, we won't describe the procedure too much. How graphic would you like to get about this? There's an interesting thing that people might want to know that involves talking about a certain part of your body, though.
Sure, go for it. Why not?
Okay,
It's the holiday
so
season.
okay, yes, let's share with the folks at home. So when you go in, and they can't do the ultrasound, they put a stent in, which is uncomfortable and makes it feel like you have to pee every 15 minutes, which was really annoying. But then when I went in 2 weeks ago and they actually blow up the kidney stone and then you pass it out or they remove it or whatever, they have to leave a little bit of the stent in for the urethral wall to make sure the stability's there and that everything's open. And you also get a string hanging out of the end of a certain part of your body that's about this long. It's about 6 inches. And then 4 or 5 days later, you are told to yank the string so that it pulls the rest of the silicone catheter out. And I was told by a customer that this is extremely painful. I almost passed out when I did it. So I spent 4 days working myself up to this, wondering, should I get a bottle of whiskey, and a leather bit to chomp on when I do this? I took some Tylenol. I got in the shower. They tell you drink a whole lot of water and pee while you do it. My wife is standing outside the door waiting for my fat ass to hit the floor in the bathtub, and nothing comes right out. And I thought that was a lot of buildup for not a lot of nothing. But so if you do have to have this done, and that ends up happening, two things. I'm not sure why the string is 6 inches long. I don't know if I was supposed to braid it or tie it in a festive bow for the Christmas season. You could probably cut that down a little bit and it won't be so aggravating. And two, don't be worried about when you take it out. I actually have to go back. The funny thing is I'm sitting in the operating the back area looking into the room, which is weird. Like I'm sitting there staring at the table I'm going to go get operated on, right? And the doctor, my urologist, Dr. Ray, who is a very blunt guy, says, "Hey, come here, look at this on the screen." I'm like, I don't have my contacts in, I can't see anything. He says, "Get up real close." So I'm looking at the screen and he says, "That's the kidney stone we're going to blow up." And I said, "Is that big?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's big." I said, "Okay." I mean, it's very visible, right?
Right.
And he goes, "Here's the good news." And he goes, "Look at the other kidney." And we look over at the other one, and there's 3 kidney stones about the same size in my right kidney. And he says, "We'll see you in February." And I said, "Really? You got to tell me that now, right before I go in and understand, like, I got to come back and do the whole thing over in February?" And he goes, "Yeah, but we're going to get it done preemptively, so hopefully you don't have to worry about it." So I get to look forward to all that again in a couple of months. I can't tell you how excited I am.
Well, I'll tell you, two gentlemen who went to sleep last night almost feeling like they were going to be passing kidney stones, and that was Scott Boras and Carlos Correa. They're all excited. They got
the king of the segue. Amazing, John. That was amazing.
Thank you very much.
I guess we could also segue. We were talking about a certain part of the anatomy, and then we jump right to Scott Boras.
He's been called a donkey's what. So Scott is collected over $1 billion in revenues for his clients this offseason, and it continues to grow. And he's getting yet another, tailor-made suit ready, and he's got Carlos ready. They're in the San Francisco hotel waiting for their press conference. That never ended up happening because there was some sort of concern as to an injury, suspected back injury, which San Francisco apparently knew about that before, but they don't like it, and they're not going to go ahead with this contract. And Scott, being the magician he is, calls Steve Cohen over in the New York Mets and says, I spoke so highly of you and that you're the savior of baseball. I need you to save baseball some more. I need you to dig deep and find another $315 million. I know it's been a busy offseason, but what's another $315 between friends? I had a really good relationship with Washington. Now I can have that same relationship with you. And Steve says, back up the Brinks truck. Carlos is going to come to New York. So Carlos Correa had to take a $35 million hit, 1 year less. So he's at 12 years, $315 million rather than 13 years, $350. And he is off to the New York Mets. Wayne, you and I both woke up this morning to this alarming news. I hope that Scott Boras and Carlos Correa are feeling much better. $350 million will make you feel much, much better, I think. But what the heck is going on in the world of baseball here?
Well, it's not my money, and that's the first thing I always say about free agent signings, right? Steve Cohen is apparently worth $17 billion, and he is 100% on track to blow all of it in this offseason. I mean, he's committed, I think it's $800 million now to free agents he's signed this year. Look, good on him. I thought that the deal with the Giants was an overpay. This is a slightly better deal. I don't necessarily know. I don't. It's hard for me to say I wouldn't do the deal because I'm not Steve Cohen and I don't have a $17 billion to throw around. And obviously, the guy's not a moron. He's going to make money on this deal, selling jerseys and everything else. Do I think it's a good deal? Not particularly. Do I think it might be the deal that makes the Mets the favorite in the National League? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you add a piece of that caliber, and apparently he's going to play third base to leave Lindor at short. I mean, my gosh, they are running up quite the bill, and he's already at, is he 50 million now over the luxury tax? So his actual payout this year is going to be something close to 400 million for this team. I mean, yeah, it buys you a spot in the playoffs most likely, but then the way the playoffs are set up, it's pretty tough to get through the playoffs with any certainty. Even if you're spending $1 billion a year, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I certainly don't fault him, especially not as somebody. I am, again, not a huge believer in, people ripping the Jays because they didn't spend this or they didn't spend that, or look how much money they have. Because it doesn't always translate to success, obviously. But I'm not gonna say anything negative about Cohen for spending the money to add. Right? I mean, if you can add good players, add good players. Do I think it's a good deal? Not particularly. Do I think it's the right move for a guy who has more money than God? Yeah, probably so.
I try to do my research, as my name is Jonathan Huck Cohen and his name is Steve Cohen. And I was hoping that we're on the same lineage chart, because then perhaps I can be a VP with the Mets. But turns out we are not related, unfortunately, Steve. But maybe the dream will be alive. Where it boggles my mind now, and segueing to our sister show, The Chosen Journey with Steve Carsey, where we talk about baseball life. We will have an episode where we're going to talk about the NL East. And remember back in the days when the AL East was the powerhouse? Well, Look at the Phillies, look at the Mets, look at the Braves. And to kind of ruin a little bit of a surprise, I think if they're healthy, that Phillies lineup is absolutely downright scary with Trey Turner in there. But the Mets have given me something to think about now. I don't know anymore. I have to go back and look at these lineups. But those are three heavy-duty powerhouses. And I'll guarantee you all three are making the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're going to be looking at the comparison to the AL East, especially from a few years ago, where the Blue Jays were a pretty good team and were likely the fourth best team in a 5-team division, right? It's an arms race now, like literally, and good on Cohen for going out there and saying, you know what? I mean, you're right, and I don't want to slag on Philadelphia. I didn't spend a lot of time in Philadelphia when I was in the States. I worked there for a few weeks. I have some friends in the Philly area, and I love Philadelphia fans as much as other people don't like them. But what is the big draw to play in Philadelphia? I mean, I'm surprised. You hear people say, oh, people want to go to New York or LA or a California team or whatever else. But I mean, Philadelphia has done an amazing job of signing guys and keeping them. And it's become, the Cardinals used to be that way in the 90s and 2000s, right? People wanted to play in St. Louis, whether it was the Blues or for the Cardinals or whatever. It seems like I don't want to slag on Philly. It's nothing to do with the town itself. It doesn't seem like it would be a premium destination. I guess it's, if the money's there and you feel like the team's going to be a winner and it's headed in the right direction, then you sign with them, right? That's pretty amazing.
I think that I haven't watched the game in Philadelphia, a baseball game. If you and I go down to a August Philadelphia game of Phillies versus Mets, I guarantee you we're gonna have a great time. And once you pony up the money for one or two guys, like once you have Bryce Harper there, and you build your team around Bryce Harper, for example, I think people are absolutely awestruck and are saying, "I want to play with Bryce." You guys are building a winner here. I can feel it. And once you have a few of those pieces, they tend to come along. There's a lot of smart signings. I love the Schwarber signing. I mean, can you imagine last year's playoffs without Schwarber in that lineup? No way.
Right.
So
yeah,
that kind of smarts. We are going to talk a little bit more about baseball, but I actually want to fast track right now to the NFL and my new favorite football player, Mr. Brock Purdy. And Wayne, we've just finished taping an episode where we're talking about Jimmy G and how great Jimmy G is and how lucky they are that Jimmy G, Mr. Garoppolo, stayed there and how they're winning with him. Jimmy G gets injured as well, and all Brock Purdy, the last draft pick of the year from last year, comes and wins, and people are jumping on the Brock Purdy train. What is up with Brock Purdy, and is he for real?
Well, you got to remember, okay, first off, this is a guy who, even though he was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft, he's the first Mr. Irrelevant to ever throw a touchdown pass in the NFL. He was a 3-time all Big 12 quarterback and twice first team. He holds pretty much every passing record at Iowa State, right? His brother is a quarterback at Nebraska, who his brother's first name is Chubba. I don't know if that's Chubba or Chuba. I don't know how to pronounce that, but he is a second-year quarterback at Nebraska, right? So it runs in the family, athleticism. Do I think he's for real? I think he definitely has the skills to be an NFL quarterback. I think that if you were going to pick a team in the NFL and say the system is built to plug just about anybody in and have them be successful, it's the 49ers. The 49ers run the kind of system that they don't ask you to do too much as a quarterback. But the neat thing about Purdy is he has that arm that he's accurate and he can go deep, right? And he just looks like, you watch the guy on the sidelines, the fans have already, I read this morning or maybe last night that the 49ers cannot keep up with the demand for Purdy jerseys. It's crazy right now, right? He looks like he kind of reminds me of Mike White with the Jets, right? I don't know whether either of these guys is ever going to be a long-term great starter in the NFL. But when you look at them on the sidelines and you look at them in the huddle, they look like a quarterback. They look like a winning quarterback, right? And I think if you make it to the NFL, if you're drafted and you make it through training camp and you get kept by the team, you clearly have the skills to be an NFL quarterback. It comes down then to what's your situation and what is your demeanor? What do your teammates think of you? Clearly, the 49ers believe in this guy. They kept him as the last guy in the draft. They kept him, right? They could have put him on the practice squad. They could have released him and signed him later. They could have gone and got another third quarterback. But even when Lance went down, they kept this guy as their backup, right? That says a heck of a lot for what the organization thinks of him. I read this morning the possibility that Garoppolo could be ready by the divisional playoffs. Okay. That brings up, if the 49ers win that first playoff game, what decision do you make? And I would hope that, you guys don't lose their jobs because of injuries or whatever else. But I don't see a huge difference between Purdy and Garoppolo here. And if you're on a roll, let the guy play, right? I'm excited to see how it develops. There's a lot of young quarterbacks in the league right now who don't have a ton of cachet, Taylor Heineke, guys like that, right? Even Trevor Lawrence, who was a number 1 overall pick, and I traded for a couple of weeks ago in my fantasy league and looks great now, right? A lot of these guys, Lawrence looks really good right now, and a lot of these other young guys, I think, again, it's quarterback is becoming, except for the super upper echelon guys, one of those places where if you build the system correctly, it's like running back. As long as you find a guy with the tools and the right demeanor, they're interchangeable to a certain extent. So that's not the most ringing endorsement of Brock Purdy, but I think he's going to be fine. I think he's protected in the system he's in.
If Jimmy G's back and Purdy keeps doing what he's doing, I can't see how you take him out. You got to stay with the hot hand. And especially since Jimmy G's been out of action for so long, you can't bring in someone cold in the playoffs, in my opinion. But if if Purdy falters or whatever being, having Jimmy G there as the backup, not a bad idea. People are ringing them in, endorsing for the Super Bowl. Do you see the 49ers having a good chance this year?
Now, before we move on to the Super Bowl, I want to ask you this question.
Okay.
So the 49ers have 3 games remaining. and they have clinched their division already. Now, obviously, they're going to continue to play to try to move up to pass the Vikings to get home games and stuff like that. What happens if they get to week 17, 18, and they can't move up or down? Do you go out and sign Blaine Gabbert or some other off-the-street quarterback to quarterback that team for those 2 weeks so that you don't take the chance that Purdy gets hurt? Because if Purdy gets hurt, you are hosed like 100%, right? That's a tough call. I mean, I think that's a discussion that has to be taking place inside the 49ers right now. I don't have their roster up to know who else is. I mean, I don't know who the backup to Brock Purdy is right now. But I don't know if I would play him once it comes to a point where you can't go any farther and move up or down. I might sit him.
I would maybe even bring him in for a couple snaps just to keep him warm, but I would not have him playing the whole games. For sure not. I don't see the incentive.
Like, I would be terrified that I
I
mean,
agree.
considering the luck you've had, right? Go ahead. I'm going to pull the roster up here real quick.
No, go for it for sure. No, I can see as far as taking 2 weeks off and coming in cold. Maybe you make sure he's dressed, make sure that he's taking a few snaps, some safe snaps in there, keeping him warm. But I would not be playing him those whole games. I don't see the incentive. There's too much risk and not enough reward with that. So I'm in full agreement with you on that one. And especially in a game like in the NFL, if you have a reason why to advance, play your guys. Otherwise, I don't care about sitting them.
Okay, so their backup is Josh Johnson. I forgot they signed Johnson a week or two ago. So they've got a guy there. Yeah,
not Josh Rosen.
No. I felt terrible for that guy. I really like Josh Rosen. I don't know what the actual issue was there. If it was just that, apparently he came from a pretty well-off family, and maybe it was just not in his nature to put the work in at the NFL level or whatever. But no, I mean, they're covered with Josh Johnson. I'm kind of a Josh Johnson fan. I believe he's been with, I think, 10 or 11 different teams now. And he's a smart guy. He'll know the system by the time. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him come in and the other crazy thing is that Purdy is not overly large. I mean, he's 6'1", 220. He's a big guy. But compared to the standards of quarterbacks now, he's not this giant like Josh Allen or whatever else, right? But he stands in there just fine, right? And sees to see the field just fine.
Well, I can't tell you I'm going to predict them. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl in a second, but I was just saying from the 49ers standpoint, if they're firing on all cylinders like this, you got to like their chances. They definitely have a shot.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I still think that if we're going to move on to that, I would say I still think it's the Eagles in the NFC, assuming that Jalen Hurts is not too banged up. He may not play the rest of the year, but they don't need him, right, for the rest of the playoff or the rest of the regular season. All the other teams that are, that have already clinched. I mean, the Vikings, God love them for coming back and from 33 points down and all that. I don't think so. I don't like the Cowboys that much. They're up and down. And, the rest of the NFC is just bad, right? I mean, I actually think that the two best, or the best team that might be kind of on the bubble and might get in, I think it might be the Lions right now. I mean, the Lions, their defense all of a sudden has really solidified. We know they have a good offense. They just got Jamison Williams into the lineup. They're getting DeAndre Swift back into the lineup. I mean, this is a team that if they can sneak into the playoffs, and they're 7-7 now, they're right on the cusp, right? And they have the Panthers this week. So hopefully you would think they would beat them and go to 8-7. If they're 8-8, they're probably in if they split in the last two games, right? I would not want to play this team in the first round. I mean, I really think whoever it is, they have a really legitimate chance to upset to pull off an upset in the first round, right?
Wayne, if you think that the Lions are going to make it to the Super Bowl, I'm going to tell you, get to Vegas immediately, put down some money. I think you're gonna make a lot of coin, my friend, if the Lions advance in the playoffs. Do I think that the Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl? No, I don't. Do I think they have a legitimate shot to win a game? I will. I haven't bet on any of the NFL. That's actually just, I'm so sick of seeing the ads for the betting that it just turned me off to doing it, right? And I'm not. I'm an OLG guy. I put down $5 on a 3-team parlay. I used to do that pretty regularly, right?
haven't done it at all, but I will probably go somewhere and find somewhere to throw $10 down on the Lions to win, that first opening game. And I probably put a few bucks on them to go a little deeper, right? What do you think about the AFC?
I mean, definitely it sounds like the winner is coming out of there. And Buffalo Bills fans would be killing me if I didn't mention it. But, over in Buffalo, they have snowflake dreams of a Super Bowl, that this is finally going to be their year. You got to love what their quarterback's up to over there. How do you not? How is it not going to be Mahomes? How is it not going to be KC? I think
Yeah,
that's where the road goes for me. If Buffalo can make it past KC, they're making it to the Super Bowl. But I have a really hard time betting against Mahomes.
I do too. I really like Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati's won 6 games in a row. They've gotten their act together. But I think to me, the absolute key for this is if Buffalo holds on to the first overall spot and they have home field advantage, it's going to be super tough to play in Buffalo, even for Kansas City. We know they can do it, right? But that's going to be pretty tough, right? If the Bills have home field advantage, I think they probably go for the AFC. If for some reason it ends up with the Chiefs, and I mean they're tied right now, right? If the Chiefs end up with it or Cincinnati ends up with it, then it's not the Bills. I think the Bills probably get beat by one of those two teams. But if you were going to force me to make a pick right now,
I
I
was about
think,
to.
yeah, for me, it's Philadelphia and Kansas City.
And who's winning the Super Bowl this year?
I would say Kansas City. It's tough. It's tough for me to bet against Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia is a fantastic team, but also this would be their first rodeo. Patrick Mahomes has been there a bunch. I would always choose the experience, right?
Talking about experiences, Wayne, I got to ask you your opinion, because I'm jumping in a car with my son. It's his birthday coming up, and we're driving down to the States from good old Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We're going to watch some NFL football. He's never watched an NFL game in his life. You have a choice for this weekend. So we're taping this pre the Christmas weekend. We are the last episode of The Chosen Life for this year. We're episode 52. So congratulations to us. This is the last 2022 episode of our podcast. So now I got a choice. I can go to Cleveland and I can watch the Saints, or I can go to Pittsburgh and watch the Raiders. Which game are you picking and why?
I would go to Pittsburgh for two reasons. One, I would go because I have a soft spot for the Raiders. I have no idea why. I am a big Josh.
It's not the Oakland Raiders, right?
I know, but I have a soft spot for Josh Jacobs, and I like Derek Carr, and I have always been kind of a Raiders fan since I read They Call Me Assassin by Jack Tatum when I was a kid, and a big fan of the '70s Raiders with Phil Villapiano and all those guys. The other thing is that neither one of these games is probably going to be very good. I'd like to see Kenny Pickett play. I don't want to see Deshaun Watson play. I really want to have anything to do with giving money to the organization for that. So I probably wouldn't want to go there either. But I would be intrigued to see the Saints, because I know this week I think there's a real good chance that Taysom Hill is going to be featured a whole bunch, and I really like watching him. I like watching them use him in all the different situations. But if I was picking, I would definitely go see Pittsburgh.
I picked Pittsburgh as well. I figured it was a better matchup, better teams. And apparently Christmas came early for me this year, because apparently Kenny Pickett is going to be playing. That's the hot rumor. Ben Roethlisberger came out and said, I don't think this is a really great idea, given he had 2 concussions this year. What's your take on Pickett going in there?
You know, I am a big proponent of being as cautious as you possibly can be in these situations, and I don't think this is that. I understand that the Steelers think that they still have an outside shot of, I mean, they're only a game out of winning the division, I think, right now. So you want to get your best players in there, but I don't think you take a chance with the future, right? I just feel like, is Mitchell Trubisky a great quarterback? No. This is not a great team, right? And they just want to. I mean, he's not been terrible with them. To me, I would just be like, Najee Harris, Here's the ball, right? Every running back is going to get 5 touches today, and Najee Harris is going to get 30, and we're just going to run the ball and hopefully keep the Raiders. Our defense can keep the Raiders off the board and keep it close, and we'll struggle that way. It's this kind of decision that this is how you get fired, right? And I know Moneyball, you can't think that way, but this is a guy's health that you're talking about, and it's your franchise's future. If it was me, I wouldn't be playing him at this point. And far be it from me to agree with Ben Roethlisberger on many things or think that he is a sage guru, has not made the best life choices himself in some instances, but I think he's right here.
I've gone to Pittsburgh a few times. Great sports town. Love watching baseball there. Hockey. This is the first time I'm watching football from there. I remember taking a cab ride to watch the Pirates, and my cab driver said to me, "I'm giving you a tour of Pittsburgh right now. This is the intersection where Ben Roethlisberger got hit with the motorcycle. So this is now this is part of the tour in Pittsburgh." And I'm like, I don't think you should be showing this to people, but they take their sports really seriously. Yeah. And that being said, in baseball, they've been suffering for many years, and I don't see that ending anytime soon for them. But they do have a great hockey team. Their football team will come back. So I think we're gonna have a great time, and I'll report back. I'm gonna be sitting second row, 10-yard line. So hopefully I'll see some touchdowns.
And are you planning on taking like snowmobiles there or what? I mean, travel this weekend is not supposed to be exactly terrific, right?
Just hope that the weather is a little off by one day, and that by the time I get in the car and I get there, they can start. By the time I leave, it'll end. So let's see. Let's hope for the best. I got snow tires. We'll see how it goes. Speaking of areas which do not have to worry about snow tires or wintry conditions, Wayne, I love talking about sports expansion. I've written articles on this. I'm obsessed with it. MLB expansion, but all the four sports leagues. Vegas, Mexico City. So Vegas, for a long time, we talked about it as a pipe dream. Lo and behold, we got 2 sports teams there already, right? We got the Golden Knights and we got the Raiders, because the Raiders are going to end up being in every city at some point or another during our lifetimes. I can definitely see the day where the NBA and MLB are going to expand to Vegas. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The money is too good. It makes too much sense for me. And think about the economic dollars now of expansion teams. Like, wow, you can ask almost anything you want. I mean, you can put a $2-3 billion price tag and someone's going to pay it. So let's start off with Vegas. I think they're getting all 4 sports leagues. Agree or disagree?
I 100% agree, especially as we're just talking about the predominance of the betting industry now. I think for a long time that was the taboo. There were 2 main things. There was, well, we don't want to be tied in with the gambling industry. And everybody who comes to Vegas is a tourist. They're not going to go to the games. Well, clearly that's not the case. And clearly there's no taboo with the gambling anymore. So I don't think there's anything stopping them getting a baseball team and an NBA team 100%. And as he said, it's free money for the owners. I mean, it's like, okay, well, let's see. We got 30 guys, and we can ask $3 billion. So it's $100 million for every guy. Is anybody going to vote no? That guy back there? Yeah, on principle, you knew you were going to get outvoted anyway, whatever, right? So no, I think that you're going to see that within 3 to 5 years would be my guess.
I just can't see how it's not going to happen. MLB has been holding off for so long. And you know what? They were not dumb to do it, because think about the economics of where they would have gotten expansion fees 10 years ago when it was first really being thrown around. Then they did reshuffling of the leagues and everything else. They're due for 2 more teams. And man, now they can ask literally anything they want. They're laughing. The one that's really behind is the NHL compared to all the other leagues. If you think about as far as the value of the teams are there, but the salaries are not, and they're going to be climbing up for sure. Like when your best player is making 12 mil, I think most, and any bum in street clothes in the NBA is making 12 million, this is a problem, So from the economic standpoint, I think the NHL is going to be seeing more rise in revenues, because that's where all the monies are going in sports. The one I'm intrigued with is Mexico City, and I think that's when you make it a really international game. I know it create restrictions for travel, etc. But they said the same thing about Canada, and we have many teams in Canada here for the sports leagues. And I remember when the NBA came here, I don't really see a difference between putting a team in Toronto, the Raptors, and then putting an NBA team in Mexico City, for example.
I don't either. I don't disagree with you. I think there could be issues of travel. There could be issues of it's going to be a hassle in terms of like taxes and things like that.
Sure.
But I don't know what the reason would be for not doing it. I mean, you're talking about such a huge city, and it's kind of like you put a team in Toronto, you put a team in Montreal. There should be a team in Montreal now, but there isn't. Um, but you make Toronto Canada's team by making them the single team, right?
Right.
We know that Mexico loves baseball. If you put a team in Mexico City, my gosh, I don't know how many people live in Mexico. It's got to be what, 100 million? Something like that.
It's a lot.
It's got to be 100 million. You know what? You make however many people are in Mexico, you instantly make them fans of that team, right? That's the going to be probably the biggest fan base in baseball, concentrated in that one area, right? I don't know how they don't do it. I don't know who the ownership is, but I don't know who's down there that wants to own the team, or maybe even if Major League Baseball might start the team and then sell it after the fact. But yeah, I think it's way too big of a market to ignore.
Imagine you're any MLB player, but especially a Spanish-speaking one. You're sitting down with your agent. It's free agency time. Okay, I can. No offense to any of these cities, but I can go play in Cleveland. I can go play in Pittsburgh. I can go play in Seattle, or I can go play in Mexico City. Where is going to be the most fun for me to go be? I'm going to Mexico City.
Right.
I'm telling you right now, sitting in our weather right now, Wayne, where I don't know every day if I'm going to be shoveling my snow or not. I'm a professional athlete. I can go to Mexico City. I'm going to Mexico City, and I've been to Mexico City, and it is a blast. So, which of the four leagues do you think is going to be the first one to break the hurdle on this? I'm kind of stuck between the NBA and MLB, and I'm going with MLB.
I think you're right. I mean, we know that the NFL has played there a number of times over the past few years. So, but I don't know that the cultural. I mean, not that there aren't Mexican football fans. By the way, 130 million people in Mexico and 22 million in the Mexico City metro area. So, I mean, my gosh, right?
I can buy some tickets.
But I think for sure it will be MLB. What I don't know is where is there a stadium in Mexico City already that is built for that type of for baseball?
Wayne, if they can play baseball in those godforsaken stadiums in Tampa and Oakland, they will put them wherever they have to for the time being in Mexico. I'm sure there'll be a stadium that can house it, and they can build them a new one. Because if you're going to pay $3 billion for your expansion team, what's another bill on the Barbie when you can build another stadium?
I agree with you, but I don't know that I mean, I don't know what stadium they play in when the NFL plays there. It's one of the soccer stadiums, right?
For sure. Yes.
The biggest stadium in Mexico City for baseball is Estadio Alfredo Harp Helú, which is 20,000 seats. So they don't have a specific baseball stadium for that. Now, clearly, there's plenty of money to build the stadium. What I don't know is if there is anywhere in Mexico City proper that you could do it. It might have to be outside of town, right? But for the time being, at least, yeah, I'm sure there's definitely they could play games and retrofit the other stadium as long as it doesn't mess with whatever other things are scheduled there, soccer and whatever else.
If they're awarded the expansion team today, if they don't start playing for at least 2 years, you can start construction almost immediately on your stadium. You can retrofit the other one in the meantime. I think we can make this happen. It's just a question of whether they're going to do it. But I can't see how you say no to expansion dollars if you're any of these leagues, and it's going to happen. So when Mexico City does get their first team, we're going to replay this episode to say, ha, 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 we told you so. And Chubba Purdy, who may have gone undrafted, Chubba, we're going to find that out. But Chubba Purdy, guy who may have gone undrafted, we will guarantee now he is going to be drafted when the time comes, as long as he stays healthy and somewhat productive. And I bet you he's not going to be the last draft pick either in that draft. So I hope Chubba is going to be sending us a thank you card. And yet another guy owes us a big, big thank you is Mr. Stuart Skinner, because The brass from Edmonton, they were watching our episode talking about how fortunate the Oilers were to get Stuart Skinner in there when Jack Campbell's been faltering. And they said, we're going to do something unheard of. Stuart, we need to sign you immediately to an extension because those guys on the Chosen Life podcast were 100% correct. Stuart's like, where do I sign? Team friendly deal. When I heard this news, Wayne, I'm actually shocked that Stuart signed for that money. I think he should have bet. This is one of the few cases I'm going to say he should have bet on himself because they're up Schitt's Creek without him. And now they can withstand that Campbell contract for the next 2 years and he can sit on the bench with Stuart playing this way. Why would Stuart Skinner sign his team friendly 3-year deal?
He's an Edmonton guy. He's a kid who grew up in Edmonton. And every interview I've seen with Skinner, all he can talk about is how glad he is to be playing for the team that he grew up watching. And I agree with you. But I mean, it's not a great deal for Stuart Skinner, but I also think that the possibility is that there is some sort of nod, wink, wink. In a year or two, we may renegotiate or whatever else, or we're going to, I don't know if the NHL actually even allows that or not, but I just think, you know what? The way that we were just talking about salaries in the NHL, right? The way that contracts work in the NHL. When was this guy, I think his contract was up at the end of the year, right? He was a free agent.
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. I think that's all he had. This guarantees him the money for 3 years. And it also means that it pretty much guarantees that he's probably going to be the starter for at least another year, right? So do I feel like he maybe cheated himself out of some money? I think maybe so, right? But I also think that, one, what better way to ingratiate yourself to the team that you grew up watching and the fans of the team to take this deal? I mean, who's going to be the most popular guy? I mean, you think McDavid's popular in Edmonton. Skinner just signed this deal, and now they have the money, especially if they could move Campbell somewhere at the trade deadline and clear the books and go get somebody else for the playoff run. I mean, this kid may have just given the Oilers the key to getting the last piece they need to make the run in the playoffs, right? Now, do I think anybody's going to take Jack Campbell off their hands? Probably not. I mean, I was reading the other day about a possible trade that I thought made sense between the Blues and the Oilers, where the Blues would get Jordan Bennington and the Oilers would get Bennington and Blues would get Campbell and a draft pick to take the thing, right? It's here's my problem and your problem, and let's trade it. Do I think Bennington would be happy not being the starter there? No, but it's good to have a guy who's won a Stanley Cup as your backup, and then maybe they trade him somewhere else at the end of the year, right? But yeah, I mean, from a money standpoint, maybe not the smartest thing, but from a personal standpoint, and from just this does so much to solidify the team now. He's your guy, right? I almost kind of wish that the Oilers, though, would have said, you know what? Here's $4 million spread over 3 years. We're going to pay you a little more, right? Because it looks a little chintzy, right? Like it's a little cheap.
But you know what? Like in the era of salary caps, you have to. So I got your trade for you. I proposed this on a different episode. I got a way to fix this for the Oilers. You trade Campbell and Connor McDavid to the Leafs for Austin Matthews and Samsonov. Who hangs up the phone on that deal?
The Oilers do. And it's not because
wouldn't Samsonov look really, really good right now for them? And Campbell?
Oh, sure, he would. But I mean, you are talking about, and let me correct too, that's a 3-year, $2.8 million deal. They're paying him $2.8 million a year. Sorry, I had that wrong. So, or 2.6. It seems to vary back and forth, right? But yes. 3 years, $8 million. That's pretty fair money, yeah, total, right? So,
yeah, but he could easily gotten Campbell money if he waited till the end of the year.
Yeah, maybe so, right? But I mean, at 3 years, $7.8 million. That's a pretty damn good deal for a young kid, right? So that's pretty good.
Well, his agent's going to write to us and say thank you for helping
for backing him up on that. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I mean, the outcry when Gretzky got traded to the Kings in '89, right? You imagine now that the Oilers management comes out and says, we've dealt Connor McDavid. If that isn't for the time machine that allows you to bring Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and Gordie Howe in as the three replacement players, the fans would just lose their minds. Look, I'm always up. I'm always up for a big trade like that. I think it's a possibility. I think you always explore it. Nobody's untouchable, right? But if anybody is as untouchable as you possibly could get, I can't imagine what you would have to throw at the Oilers to loosen McDavid up from him. Right?
So Austin Matthews and a 1B goalie ain't gonna do it for you.
I don't know if you called them and said, we will give you Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and a goalie, that they would trade McDavid for that. I just don't know, because you're ripping the guts out of your franchise, especially considering that now that you have a solid goaltender at a reasonable price, you might actually, you have a legitimate shot of winning 3 or 4 Stanley Cups as you sit, right? The amount of turmoil that would cause, do I think that would be a good hockey trade? Yeah, it would be a good hockey trade for the Oilers. But do I think they would do it? I actually don't think they would do it.
Wayne, I am in shock. I don't know what is in your coffee this morning, but Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and Samsonov
Straight up for McDavid.
And you take Jack Campbell off their hands.
Yeah, I don't think the Oilers would do it.
I think they do it in a second, and I don't think the Leafs would do it. So wow, interesting.
Oh, I don't think the Leafs would do that trade, but I'm saying even if the Leafs, if Kyle Dubas snuck a couple of edibles or something in, and they made the call late night and said, "Oh, I'm high as AF, and let's trade Marner and Matthews and Samsonov for McDavid and Campbell," I still don't think the Oilers would do it.
Another guy who decided to not make a certain trade and it's come back to bite him is the Aaron Judge ball guy. You gotta love these segues. So remember him, where we thought he's gonna get maybe $5 million for his ball because he turned down $3 million. Well, it turns out, Wayne, that your best offer is usually your first offer. This go, being a real estate lawyer, I can't tell you how times realtors have told me that my client is selling a house, and we got our first open house, and we got our first offer in, and they're like, it's a little low. We're gonna wait it out. You know what? They sold 2 to 3 weeks later, maybe a month later, and they got less money than that first offer. You always usually take the first offer because that's your best offer. So he's on the high of having the Aaron Judge ball in his hand, right? Home run 62, if I'm not mistaken. And somebody came up to him and offered him $3 million. And he's like, get that $3 million out of my face. I'm going to get way more at auction. So first of all, I would have taken the $3 million in a second. I'd be like, okay, let's go to the bank. We'll stay in a hotel together. You can keep your eye on the ball. We'll go in the morning. You'll give me the cashier's check. And I am out of here to Tahiti with my $3 million US dollars. And he's like, no, I'm going to do the fair. I love his explanation, right? I'm going to do the democratic process. I'm going to do the fair route. It should go up in auction because we should give everybody the right, including Aaron Judge, to bid on this ball. Aaron Judge is like, hell no, I'm not stupid enough to spend $3 million plus on a ball, even though I just signed how much was his contract weight again?
Oh, golly, 300 and something million dollars? 360.
360. So less than 1% of his contract would have gone towards purchasing the ball, which now it would be actually 0.5% if he would have paid the 1.5. But Aaron Judge is like, no, he caught the ball. I hope he makes the right decision for his family. Well, Wayne, you being in the memorabilia market since over at Doug Lowery Sports, not only do you have the store, you also have your online auctions, which people can check out. And are you surprised that this ball only went for $1.5 million?
I am and I'm not, and I know that's an equivocating answer, but I'll back that up with a fool and his money are soon parted. That is kind of my rule for auctions, especially high value auctions, right? And look, I know Kenny Golden a little bit. I've dealt with Golden auctions in the past, right? They have sold some stuff for me personally. Not $1 million worth of stuff, unfortunately, but so this is not an issue of not choosing the right auction house or anything like that, right? this is a misreading of the market to a certain extent, because there are still things selling for ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous amounts of money, far above what I believe the true market value of the piece is. For whatever reason, you know, I would imagine that if I was Kenny Golden and I was sitting down with the fellow who caught the ball and we were discussing this, right? I'm sure he told him it's possible that the ball might only go for $1 million or $2 million, but the upside of that is it's possible it might go for 5 or 10 million. It just depends on which people you get. You know, I sold an autographed Jackie Robinson rookie card a number of years ago, which is not as expensive as you think. And I was told by the auction house that they could not tell me, they obviously can't tell you who bidders are. But I was told that both Will Smith and Jay-Z were involved in the possible purchase of the card. Now, we're not talking about even a 5-figure card at this point. This is 10 years ago, right? But the card did not climb above what we thought it would sell for. I was happy with what I got. But if you don't have those guys sitting around, or a representative for those guys sitting around at the end of the night when the auction closes, if everybody just kind of that one night says, you know what, I'm out, I'm going to bed, hey, Die Hard's on, I'm not going to sit here and watch the auction here like I should. You pull one or two guys out, and all of a sudden, if there had been 2 other guys sitting at the computer that night, Steve Cohen, that ball could have gone for $10 million. It's entirely possible. It just didn't. That's the way the auction business works, and it's the risk you take. It's what I tell people when you consign stuff with me. You know, we have a minimum bid, and you have to accept that if you only get the minimum bid, you have to deal with that. So we have to pick a number you'll be happy with, right? I think the ball is worth more than $1.5 million? I absolutely do not. I don't find this ball to be that historic of a baseball, to be honest with you. It's not. I know people want to crap all over Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire was doing what was allowed at the time by the league, and there's no way around that, right? People want to crap on Barry Bonds, whatever. I don't care. I don't think the 60-second ball is more historic than those balls are, and they're not worth that anymore either, right? So it just comes down to you roll the dice in an auction, and this time this guy came up snake eyes. I mean, as much as you can come up snake eyes at 1.5 million, right?
I also think when I reflect on this, Wayne, I think he had the perfect storm of the worst time to sell this ball. If I'm selling this ball at auction, all else equal, I want to do it while we're all on the high of the record. We're all on the high of Aaron Judge. We're all really excited about Aaron Judge. We're loving Aaron Judge. We're loving this during the playoff season. Yankees still have hope. By the time this ball gets sold at auction, Yankees long out of the playoffs. World Series long done. Aaron Judge does his tour and going to go to the Giants. The last second, he extorts the money out of the Yankees. He's not looking that favorable anymore. He's not, the luster is gone, so to speak. All these other players are getting $1 bazillion. Interest rates are up. Money's not as liquid as it used to be. You know, people crying, are we in a recession, a depression, whatever it being? And we're already on to the other sports leagues. You know, we're getting excited for the Super Bowl. And it feels like Aaron Judge, yeah, that was yesterday's news. And I'm not that excited anymore. And he's not that great anymore because I'm focusing on other stuff. So I'm hearing what you're saying. And I feel like everybody's already changed the channel to go watch other programs. And if they could have put that ball a week later after he hit it,
100%, yeah.
The timing was really bad. I don't know what they thought as far as they're going to market this ball, but it's like you dragged it on too long and you missed the boat. And I think it's very clear they missed the boat. And whoever paid the $1.5 million, I don't see how he's going to go and recoup that money or make money unless Aaron Judge goes and gets another record. Or the Yankees, if the Yankees are in the World Series, Aaron Judge is the World Series MVP, then you put that ball up immediately for auction at that point. Right. I think it's all about timing.
Do I think it was a bad buy for the guy who spent the $1.5 million? I don't necessarily know that it's a bad buy, but I don't think that the people who are buying sports memorabilia at this point and spending millions of dollars are buying it for historical value. They're buying it to flip it. They're buying it for investment purposes, right? We don't know who bought the ball at this point. It could have been a fractional buyer, and I don't know if you know what fractional buying is in the market, right? Guys who buy shares of something, right? The company buys it. I find it ridiculous, but
It's insane.
whatever.
It's insane. Yeah.
Um, but it's possible. But I think this person's going to be able to make money on this? I don't know how either, right? I don't know who bought this. I don't know who pays more later on down the road for this baseball. They all have a history of sinking above a certain level, right? Where you're not going to recoup your money. You know, the Paul Henderson jersey that sold a few years ago at classic auctions in Montreal, and it sold for almost 1.5 million US. Um, my understanding is that was purchased by a guy who owned a business who then was able to display it as business and write the business expense off, right? This is a possibility for this ball too, if we find out who it is, that they might be able to use it in a promotional sense or a business sense and write it off. And then maybe it makes a certain amount of sense there. But yeah, I don't think this person's going to be able to make money down the road on this.
Especially, let's say Vladdy Guerrero Jr. all of a sudden goes and hits 63. As soon as that record is broken, then I'm not gonna say it's worthless, but it's really insignificant now.
Right.
And even in the NL, if we see somebody cranking out a lot of home runs and hits more home runs, even though it's not the AL record, I think the luster will be gone. You also need Aaron Judge to stay healthy. If Aaron Judge goes on to have the career he's having, because he's had injury concerns in the past, but he goes on to have a great career. He goes on to Cooperstown one day. Then when he has his induction, then you go sell the ball as well. So you have to hedge your bets as well as far as where Aaron Judge's trajectory goes and where the league goes in general, and if the amount of home runs getting cranked out. Like all of a sudden, if there's 70 home runs being cranked out in the AL one year, this ball is gone. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where that hits. Wayne, last episode of the season, as we're saying, as we look towards 2023 with the chosen life. How's the Christmas season been going over at Doug Laurie Sports? And any last minute gift giving or gift buying ideas for people in the sporting world?
The season's been pretty solid for me. I'm not really a Christmas store. I don't bring in a lot of Christmas merchandise, so to speak. One, because you spend $20,000 or $30,000 on inventory, and then you end up selling $20,000 worth of it, and you have to blow the rest out to make your profit on it. I just got tired of doing that. Plus, now with the businesses coming back after the shutdowns, lots of the businesses that we dealt with to buy smaller amounts of that stuff couldn't make it through the 2 years of COVID, and they're gone. So now you're talking about dealing with online places that want to sell you $20,000 or $30,000, or they don't want to deal with you at all. But it's been pretty solid. The card market is still pretty strong for me here. It's definitely, there are a lot of guys who were in it that were flippers that are gone, that they are calling and trying to dump things. That's what the show was in Toronto. There was a lot of guys walking around trying to sell things. You know, last minute gifts. The crazy thing is the best little seller for me has been, I don't know if you're familiar with Oyo. That's the company that took over the NHL license for Lego style stuff. And I bought a bunch of it in the spring when my distributor was clearing out some space. Totally forgot I had it. And a lady called me last week and said, "Do you have any Oyo?" And I said, "No, I don't." And then half an hour later was bugging me. And I thought, man, did I buy some of that? I don't even remember. We went and dug it out, and now like it's a great stocking stuffer. They're very well made. We have little locker room kits for like Austin Matthews and Ovechkin. There's even an interview media area set up of Lego where the guy's behind a table answering with a microphone, and that's a great gift, and kids love that stuff if you can find it out there anywhere. We do have quite a bit of it left here in the store from what I bought earlier. And other than that, it's that, you know, the Christmas season for me is people coming in and asking me for oddly specific oddball NFL and NBA teams that like even the arena might not have that. If you flew to Golden State, they might not have what you're asking me for, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, you know what always makes a great gift and nobody ever thinks of it and people think it's boring is books too. If you can pick up Kevin Shea's book from this with Derek Sanderson recently, the new Matthew Barnaby book is fantastic. Any of Kenny Reed from Sportsnet's, his books on hockey cards, which we have signed by him here in the store, those are all great gifts. And it's something that the person is going to actually enjoy and think of you while they're reading the book, right? So,
well, Wayne, stay tuned because as we go into 2023, fall of 2023. My book that I have written is in the process of getting ready. It's completed, it's being edited, and it will be published in time for the Christmas season of 2023. So stay tuned. You'll be getting your autographed copy, and we'll be sure to be talking about that in the new year. So you were reading my mind.
We'll have you come up and do a book signing here at the store.
Oh, I appreciate that very much, my friend. And please to let everybody know that as 2023 comes in, we're going to keep doing our monthly segments with Wayne. Wayne, you know, you and I have been friends for a long time. We had an instant rapport from the moment you came on The Chosen Life. Talked about going to high school with Paul White, the big show. And I always look forward to our segments. You had so much knowledge and wisdom in the world of sports. So looking forward to 2023 together. And before you know, we'll be in there January coming up for our next episode.
Yep, looking forward to it. You know, the all the best to you and yours and everybody at your firm down there too. And to Steve Carsey, tell him I said hi. And you know, to everybody out there watching, even the Starbucks baristas, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and all that good stuff. And happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Absolutely. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year and a big 2023. And as we sign off the year 2022, we pull up the guns and we tell everybody, keep living the chosen life.
100%.